In the void between stars, there are dreams so vast they birth entire universes, and in one such dream, a Saiyan never fell to earth. He drifted through the cosmic currents, a golden ember of fate, until the hand of a god reached out and claimed him. This is not the story of Goku, the Earth's savior. This is the story of Kakarot, the child who woke up beneath the eyes of a destroyer. Where compassion would have shaped him, silence would temper him. Where battle taught him joy, divinity would teach him restraint. And from that divine silence, a new kind of warrior would emerge, one whose power was not born from anger, but from awareness. Before we descend into this alternate destiny, into the roar of creation and the stillness of gods, remember to join the journey, so our timelines may never fade into silence. In the beginning, before the name Goku ever echoed across the stars, before the earth was ever blessed or burdened by his light, there was a child drifting between destinies. A child whose cradle was a vessel of steel, streaking across the infinite black like a forgotten wish. Inside that capsule, a small Saiyan slept. His heartbeat was steady, his spirit wild, a flame waiting for wind. His pod moved through storms of cosmic radiation, through waves of sleeping gods and ancient dust. But the universe, as it often does with those chosen by fate, decided to alter his path. The course that should have led him to Earth, to Grandpa Gohan, to innocence, to love, veered. One subtle ripple in gravity, one unseen distortion near the realm of destruction, and the pod drifted where mortals dared not tread. It fell into the dominion of a god. Whis was the first to feel it, a flicker in the rhythm of existence. The angel's senses reached far beyond galaxies, and yet this spark was unlike any other, primal, raw, yet harmonious. He turned his gaze to the horizon, where the lavender skies of BEERUS's world glowed beneath two suns. A streak of fire split the heavens, descending like a tear from creation itself. Whis hovered over the crater before the smoke had even settled. His expression was calm, curious, like an artist studying a sudden brushstroke on a divine canvas. The vessel hissed, molten rock dripping from its edges. Inside, a child stirred. His black hair rose wildly, defying gravity, his tiny fists clenched as if born ready to fight the universe. "How curious," Whis whispered. "A Saiyan infant, cast adrift, yet alive." Behind him, a ripple of power broke the silence. The world trembled as BEERUS, the god of destruction, emerged from his temple. His golden eyes burned, half-lidded with annoyance, his yawn carrying enough force to shift clouds.
Whis smiled faintly. "A visitor, my lord, one who seems to have wandered into your territory." BEERUS's tail flicked lazily. "If it's mortal, destroy it. I'm not in the mood for charity." Whis tilted his head. "Ah, but this mortal hums in rhythm with your own key. It might be amusing to observe. You do enjoy surprises, do you not?" BEERUS grumbled, stepping forward. The crater reflected his face in its molten glass as he peered into the pod. A pair of black eyes stared back, defiant, unblinking. The god frowned. "He doesn't fear me." Whis smiled, his tone playful. "Nor should he. Fear clouds potential." BEERUS crossed his arms, intrigued despite himself. "So, what do you propose?" "Keep him," Whis replied lightly. "Let destruction raise creation. It would be poetic." The god of destruction snorted. "You and your poetry. Fine, but if he annoys me, I'll erase him with a flick." "Of course," Whis said, already lifting the child from the pod. "Then let us name him by what he already is, a force of nature." He looked down at the small, furious creature and smiled. Kakarot. And thus, on a planet where silence was law and stillness divine, a mortal was given to the gods. Years unfolded like cosmic silk. The boy grew beneath twin suns. each day a trial between body and spirit. BEERUS's planet was no place for mortals. Its gravity crushed mountains, its air shimmered with divine heat, and yet Kakarot thrived. He trained under Whis, running across crystal plains until his muscles sang with exhaustion, meditating under frozen waterfalls of light until his heartbeat matched the pulse of the cosmos. But unlike other students Whis had tutored, gods, angels, and entities older than time, Kakarot was alive. His laughter echoed between mountains when he fell. His screams of determination cracked the air when he rose again. He did not seek perfection, he chased it.
One morning, as dawn poured over the planet in sheets of gold, Whis floated before him. "Kakarot," he said, "you train with the energy of the storm. But a storm that never rests, never reflects, eventually destroys itself." Kakarot's fists tightened. "Then I'll learn to master the calm." "Good," Whis said, smiling. "But remember, calm is not stillness, it is awareness." That day, Kakarot sat for hours at the edge of the world, staring at the horizon. The wind passed over his skin like the breath of eternity. His thoughts, once wild, began to slow. He felt the hum of atoms, the faint thrum of his own heart aligning with the planet's pulse. It was the first time he sensed ki not as fire, but as music. Years later, when BEERUS stirred from his 100-year slumber, the first thing he felt was not hunger or wrath, but the faint vibration of power that was not his own. He opened his golden eyes, tail twitching. "Whis, what is that?" Whis smiled knowingly. "Ah, you're awake, my lord. What you sense is the boy." "The boy?" BEERUS stood, stretching. "You mean the Saiyan? You didn't destroy him yet?" "He has become quite remarkable. He trains without complaint, eats without greed, and meditates with patience even angels could envy. I dare say he has developed a balance." BEERUS scoffed. "Mortals and balance. A contradiction." Still, curiosity prickled at him. He stepped onto the balcony of his temple, gazing down at the figure meditating far below. The air around Kakarot shimmered, energy folding and unfolding like waves. His hair stirred in the wind. His aura, soft yet vast, whispered through the valley. BEERUS frowned. "He doesn't even notice I'm watching." "Perhaps he does, and perhaps he's simply not concerned." BEERUS felt something stir in his chest, the faint irritation of being unseen. He descended. Kakarot opened his eyes as the air bent around him. Before him stood the god of destruction, tall, lean, his presence like gravity given form.
BEERUS's voice was calm, but every syllable carried danger. "You've grown strong, mortal, strong enough to make my planet tremble in its sleep." Kakarot stood, his posture humble yet unyielding. "I only train to understand." BEERUS raised a brow. "Understand what?" "The silence," Kakarot said softly. "Why it feels alive." For the first time, BEERUS hesitated. He studied the mortal, this Saiyan who spoke like a sage and stood like a warrior. "Show me," the god finally said. "Show me what the silence has taught you." The battle began without sound. BEERUS moved first. One flick of his wrist, one ripple of divine energy, and the valley shattered. But Kakarot moved through the destruction like wind through fire, fluid, fearless. His strikes were sharp, but not desperate. His power flared not from rage, but from stillness. Whis watched from afar, his staff reflecting the dance of chaos and grace. "How fascinating," he murmured. destruction meeting awareness, teacher and student, creation and end. Kakarot dodged a blow that split the sky in two. BEERUS smirked. Impressive. You don't cower. I listen, Kakarot replied, voice steady. Even your anger has rhythm. BEERUS's eyes flashed. Then listen to this. He unleashed his true aura, violet flame erupting in every direction. Kakarot was engulfed, his body crushed by divine gravity. He dropped to his knees, bones creaking, lungs collapsing under pressure. But deep within the weight, something awoke. He remembered the calm, the silence, the hum of existence itself, and then he breathed. Energy rippled outward, golden and alive. His eyes flared with fire. The ground shattered beneath his feet, but his heartbeat was tranquil, like the echo of the universe remembering itself. BEERUS stepped back, amused. So, that's the sound of your silence.
Kakarot straightened, aura burning brighter than before. It's not silence, he said. It's everything listening. Their final clash split the clouds apart. The sky bent, the air wept light. When it ended, both stood motionless. BEERUS's robe was torn, Kakarot's body bled. The wind carried only the echo of power now spent. Whis descended, smiling. Well done, both of you. It seems the balance holds. BEERUS wiped dust from his arm. He's still standing, that's something. Kakarot bowed deeply. Thank you, my lord. BEERUS turned away, his tone distant. Don't thank me. I didn't spare you. You survived. And as he vanished into the temple's shadows, Whis glanced at the boy, the mortal who had made a god take notice. Rest now, he said softly. You've begun to hear what even destruction cannot. That night, beneath a sky alive with endless stars, Kakarot lay upon the grass. The planet hummed softly beneath him. He smiled faintly. He did not know it yet, but that day the gods had stopped watching over him. They had begun to watch because of him. Morning unfolded like a slow revelation. The twin suns climbed the lavender sky of BEERUS's world, washing the crystal plains in molten amber. Kakarot awoke before their light, as he always did, not to chase strength, but to listen for it. He knelt by the mirrored lake, where the water held the heavens without a ripple, and he drew his breath down to the quiet seam where body and cosmos touched. The air here was thin with divinity. It tasted like restraint. Even the wind moved with purpose, crossing the open distances as if bowing to an invisible rhythm. Whis arrived without footfall, as though the world had imagined him back into being. Your breathing has changed, he said, voice a bell in the morning hush. Kakarot opened his eyes. It slows on its own now. When I try to force it, it breaks. Whis tilted his head, pleased. Destruction is often a forced breath. Awareness is the exhale that follows. He gestured with the staff, and the lake's surface rose in a glassy column, quivering but unbroken. Walk.
Kakarot stepped onto the lifted water. It flexed beneath his weight, not with resistance, but with memory. Each step required nothing extra, nothing ornamental. He felt the impulse to prove himself flare and pass like a cloud shadow. He did not chase it. He did not swat it away. He simply continued, heel to toe, quiet as thought, until he stood at the center of the column and let his weight drop into stillness. The column held. The lake reflected him as a vertical horizon. Again, Whis said, and with a flick of the staff, turned the column into a ring of liquid light that spun in the air like the edge of a slow galaxy. Kakarot leapt, not high, not far, precise. Every motion pared down to necessity, every intention shaved of noise. When his foot touched the ring, it did not splash. It signed a pact. He pivoted once, twice, 3 times, and the water never broke. Only when Whis lowered the ring and let it pour back into the lake did Kakarot release his breath. The world exhaled with him. "Your instincts are beginning to think," Whis mused. Kakarot smiled a little. "Or my thoughts are learning to be quiet." A yawn rolled across the plateau like distant thunder. BEERUS emerged from the mouth of his temple, golden eyes half-lidded, tail describing a lazy arc behind him. "If the 2 of you turn my morning into another meditation contest," he said, "I will destroy something out of principle." Whis smothered a laugh. "Good morning, my lord. We were only aligning the student with his ceiling." BEERUS looked at Kakarot for a long, bare moment. "He keeps raising it," he muttered. "Annoying habit for a mortal." He descended a few steps, the air tightening under his presence. "Today he learns to fail with grace." "Again?" Kakarot asked, unable to stop the spark of eagerness. BEERUS's lip twitched. "Always." They did not go to the training fields, nor to the high platforms where air thins into light. BEERUS walked the long path to the planet's quietest place, a basin framed by jagged obsidian spires, its floor a disk of fused glass. The basin was the world's ear. It heard even what gods refused to say. Here Whis disappeared to the rim and said nothing more. BEERUS raised a hand. Without a word, the temperature dropped and the horizon doubled, as though the planet had remembered 2 versions of itself at once. A violet pulse rippled out from his palm. The fused glass puckered, then smoothed, then puckered again. Kakarot recognized that energy, Hakai, dressed down into lesson, the taste of endings. But there was restraint laid over it like silk. BEERUS had wrapped the irreducible in mercy so that a mortal might survive long enough to understand. Do not dodge, do not harden, do not try to be more, be less. Kakarot stood in the circle of glass and let his knees unlock. When the pulse reached him, his skin prickled, as if a second, impatient universe were trying to peel him out of this one. He did not flare his aura. He did not build a wall. He thinned. He attended. He let the smallest possible Kakarot receive the largest possible force.
The pulse passed through, and for an instant he felt himself as lattice rather than stone, as the space between notes rather than the note. He almost smiled at the strangeness of recognizing there had always been this other way to be. Then the pulse returned on a backbeat, sharper. Pressure sought orders, fear tried to invent them. Be less, he told himself, and the thought was not words but subtraction. The second pulse went through, and when the third came, a quick, mean cousin of the first 2, he stumbled. Not from pain, from remembering with a hot jolt the dunked thunder of another life he didn't live. A mountain hut, a small warm hand, the laugh of an old man who would have named him differently. The memory was not his, but some echo of the path diverted pressed a thumb into his focus, and the Hakai thread snagged. Glass screeched. His aura hiccuped into gold, then white, then nothing. BEERUS's eyes narrowed a fraction. Again. They went again, and again. The 4th time, Kakarot did not stumble. The 6th, he caught the returning pulse and leaned, not stopping it, not redirecting it, only meeting its need with a shape that made ending unnecessary. BEERUS's head tilted, not approval, not displeasure, a predatory attention in which the prey had become interesting for reasons the predator refused to name. When the basin released its held breath, BEERUS lowered his hand. "You keep not dying," he said. Instructive. Kakarot pressed his palm to the warm glass, gratitude running from the heel of his hand into the planet. "Thank you."
Don't thank me. I use less than a taste, BEERUS said, and the words were true and not. He had used enough to erase a star if he'd stopped pretending. He turned away. Eat. You shake when you bow. You can't listen with hungry knees. They ate on the temple steps, a spread Whis conjured that glowed without heat and tasted like orchard wind. BEERUS pretended not to watch how Kakarot chewed, how he held his bowl, how he set it aside when full and did not linger for more. He pretended not to notice that a mortal could become elegant just by wanting nothing extra. When the bowls were gone, Whis drifted into shade and closed his eyes. Kakarot remained on the steps, hands loose on his knees, gaze on the far rim where violet met gold. Lord BEERUS, when you destroy a world, do you ever hear its last breath? BEERUS's tail stilled. Sometimes, he said, a touch too quickly, then narrowed his eyes as if catching himself in an answer he didn't mean to give. It is not a breath. It is a correction. The universe sets its spine. What you hear is relief. Kakarot nodded. I thought it might be sorrow, but when I held your pulses today, they were tidy. Tidy, BEERUS repeated, and for a beat the god's mouth threatened a smile. A mortal calling Hakai tidy. Whis will paint this on a wall. Kakarot's eyes softened. I don't mean small, I mean precise, like trimming a branch so the tree can find the sky.
BEERUS stood. Do not mistake gardening for mercy. The tree grows or it fails. The cut does not beg. I know. Kakarot's voice thinned into thread. That's why I want to hear clearly. The day tilted toward the evening. Light went long and bronze and full of the dust of what had been done. Whis opened his eyes and listened to a hush that carried more than quiet. Something larger than weather had begun moving. The first tremor came as a change in flavor. Kakarot tasted iron in the air, a dry edge as if the sun had scraped its knee. The second was visible. A seam opened across the upper atmosphere, not a tear, but a joining, where elsewhere had been sewn to here. The third made the temple bells stir without sound. From the seam, objects began to right themselves into falling, dull at first, then bright enough to draw lines across the mind. Meteors. Not accident, not debris. A storm with posture. The sky bent its back to carry it. Whis rose. Curious timing, he murmured. BEERUS's gaze thinned. He felt at the edges of the event for intention, divine prank, angelic test, the king's idle whim, and found none. Only a pressure that said, this is how flame remembers to be flame. He did not move to stop it. He did not move at all. Kakarot stood on the temple steps until the first stone bloomed against the far horizon like a hard flower and threw its shock into the ground. Pebbles danced at his feet. Something inside him, that old, bright dog that loved to run just to feel the legs, pulled at the leash. He touched the pull and did not let go, and did not let it go of him. He bowed to BEERUS, to Whis, to the suns. He lifted into the air. Do not perform, BEERUS said, voice even, dull, which in him meant attentive. Do not decorate the air with yourself. Remove what is untrue. I will listen, Kakarot said. Then you will hear, Whis answered. He rose until the planet flattened, until the palace was a small pale thumbprint. The seam above was a glowing mouth now, and from its lip the meteors fell with the regularity of breath. He placed himself in their path, not as a wall, not as a savior, as a tuning fork. The first met his palm and shattered into rice-bright grit that drifted down like a blessing. The second he shouldered aside and watched it disintegrate against the resistant kindness of air. The third carried a heart of old pressure, the kind that arise with forgotten oaths.
It hit his forearm and numbed his hand to absence. He tightened his breath rather than his fist and let sensation return without asking it to hurry. The storm thickened. The sky became a room with stones for furniture. Kakarot moved as he had walked the water. Nothing extra. Patience and speed, speed and patience. The world below chimed under each strike, but did not protest. For a time there was only work and the joy under work, that the body could keep a promise made in training to a future it could not see.
Then the seam broadened. The mouth smiled too wide. A body fell through that was not stone at all but unborn earth, big enough to lean its shadow across a continent. It burned white, grinning as it came. He knew the taste of it before it touched him, the plain stubbornness of mass that trusts gravity more than prayer. He rose to meet it, and in his chest something old stood up. The dog, the child, the flame, call it Saiyan, lifted its head and laughed. He laughed with it not to feed it, not to starve it, to greet it. The meteor's face filled the sky. Heat made a ghost of the air around him. The first thought flickered, more, and he let it be a firefly and not a sun. The second thought, faster, he loosed from his hand like a moth and did not chase. He breathed. The white descended, and for an instant he heard it count its own heartbeats, vast and simple. His aura opened like a window. Not a roar, a corridor. Not defiance, permission. He placed his palm against the arriving world. The planet rang. The light went through him and out. The meteor shuddered, fissures sketching themselves across its hide in quicksilver lines. He heard the choice in it. Hold together and die hard, fall apart and die soft. He did not choose for it. He kept offering the corridor. It cracked. It became a flock. The flock became ash. He floated in the drift, lungs cool, heart quiet, hair lightly stirring as if some low weather had passed. Below, the basin gleamed. Above, the same learned a new idea about closing and tried it on. On the temple steps, BEERUS's tail had stilled entirely. Whis stood with the staff at rest, not moving to applaud, not moving to advise. The god said nothing for a long time, the silence full as ripe fruit. When he finally spoke, it was the smallest he had ever let his voice be. Again, BEERUS said to the sky that had sent the stones, and his mouth held the ghost of a smile. The seam obliged. Kakarot lifted his face to the second wave, and the dog in him did not tug. It walked at his heel. He felt the place in his spine where joy met discipline and shook hands. Then he moved. The air bloomed with the faintest edge of a color not yet named. His ki did not flare. It clarified, the way a river clears after a rain and shows you stones you always suspected were there. The next body falling was larger. It carried memory scars, mineral seams like old healed lightning. He rose until the air thinned to silk. When he reached for it, his fingers trembled, not for fear, not for effort, with recognition. The boundary he had touched in the basin under BEERUS's pulses was here, in the open, asking to be crossed without drama. The hair at his temple lifted, kissed by the light of a color the eye remembers before it sees.
He placed his hand. Something in him answered from very far away and very near. The edge of his aura brightened, not wire, not louder, truer. The sky waited with him. The explosion did not roar, it breathed. A flash swallowed the sky, but there was no scream of impact, no thunder of destruction. Instead, the air pulsed outward, soft and deliberate, like a single heartbeat shared between mortal and world. When the light dimmed, the heavens were quiet. The meteor had not been shattered, it had been dissolved. Its fragments now drifted like embers of sleep, falling harmlessly into the golden fields below. Kakarot hovered amid the settling dust, his eyes half-lidded,
his aura subdued to a faint whisper of silver white. His chest rose and fell, not with fatigue, but with awe. For the first time, his ki didn't burn, it flowed. He looked at his hands, trembling not from exhaustion, but from recognition. "So this is what you meant, Whis," he murmured to the wind. "Destruction without chaos, power without want." Below, Whis smiled faintly. "He speaks as if enlightenment were a memory rather than a discovery," he mused aloud. BEERUS's gaze, sharp and unblinking, tracked the sand in silence. The god's aura, though dormant, began to stir, faint ripples of violet dancing across his skin like a reflection of forgotten instinct. "He is not supposed to move like that," BEERUS muttered. "Not as a mortal." Whis folded his arms, amused. "And yet here he is, doing so without asking your permission." BEERUS's tail flicked in irritation, or perhaps in unease. "There's something in him, a pulse the gods didn't make." "The universe," Whis replied simply. BEERUS scoffed. "Poetic nonsense." "Perhaps," the angel said, eyes narrowing with quiet joy. "But poetry has a way of becoming prophecy, doesn't it?" Kakarot descended slowly, his feet touching the sacred stone before the temple. The silence felt alive. Even the air seemed reluctant to disturb what had just occurred.
BEERUS appeared before him, his movements quiet yet impossible to ignore. "You destroyed what should not have been destroyed," he said flatly. Kakarot bowed his head slightly. "It wasn't destruction, my lord. It was return." BEERUS frowned. "Return?" "The stones were fire, pretending to be stone. They wanted to be light again. I just reminded them." The gods stared at him for a long, tense moment. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed, low, cold, but real. "You reminded them?" Kakarot nodded, uncertain whether it was amusement or anger that colored the god's voice. BEERUS stepped closer, his golden eyes burning brighter. "Tell me, mortal, when the time comes, will you remind me who I am?" Kakarot looked up, and in that instant, for the first time, he met BEERUS's gaze without flinching. "If the universe asks it of me? Yes." For a moment, even the wind forgot to move. Then BEERUS smiled, not kindly, but with the faint thrill of danger. "Good. Keep that arrogance. You'll need it." Whis, who had been watching from the side, clapped his hands once. "Marvelous! You've both managed to terrify the cosmos before breakfast. Shall we have tea?" The tension cracked. The divine air, thick with possibility, thinned back into peace. That night, when BEERUS and Whis had retired into their chambers, Kakarot remained outside beneath the twin moons. Their pale light cast twin reflections across the crystal lake, and for the first time he saw his own reflection doubled, one golden, one white. He stared for a long while, as if waiting for the water to answer a question he hadn't yet asked. "Which one am I?" he whispered. The reflection shimmered, the two versions of himself rippling into one. He closed his eyes and let the silence fill him. In that stillness, he could feel the hum of every moment, the heartbeat of planets, the exhale of stars, the laughter of distant lives. His own ki blended into it all until he could no longer tell where he ended and the universe began.
And within that silence, a voice rose, not a sound, but a knowing. To listen is to destroy the illusion of separation. Kakarot's eyes opened slowly, glowing faintly in the moonlight. He understood now. Strength was not measured by how much one could fight, but by how deeply one could hear. Days passed. The storm had ended, yet the rhythm of training continued, not in violence, but in patience. Whis taught him to weave motion into stillness, to strike without thought, to surrender to the flow rather than shape it. Each movement drew him closer to that wordless space where instinct became enlightenment. But with every step upward, the shadows of curiosity deepened behind BEERUS's eyes. The god would watch from afar, pretending disinterest, yet his aura betrayed him, subtle waves of power flickering whenever Kakarot approached the edge of something new. "Whis," BEERUS said one afternoon, voice low, "he shouldn't be able to feel divine ki. Mortals don't cross that bridge." Whis turned his staff lazily in his hands. "Mortals aren't supposed to exist on your planet either, yet here he stands, perfectly alive." "You think this is amusing?" Whis smiled faintly. "No, I think it's necessary." The god expression hardened. "Necessary for what?" Whis said simply, "For you." The god glared. "Explain." Whis turned away, his voice almost playful, but tinged with something ancient. "Even destruction must evolve, my lord. Without awareness, it's just noise." Later, as twilight bled into indigo, BEERUS stood upon the temple balcony, watching the Saiyan train. Each punch Kakarot threw did not tear the air, it moved with it. Each stripe was a conversation with gravity itself, each step a dialogue between mortal will and divine law. BEERUS's claws tightened around the railing. "He reminds me of something old," he muttered. Whis appeared beside him. "Perhaps yourself, before eternity dulled the hunger."
BEERUS looked away, his gaze hardening. "You think this mortal can teach me?" "I think," Whis said gently, "he already has." The following dawn, the air shifted again. A presence rolled across the horizon, not divine, but powerful, ancient in its own right. It was pride given form, rage wrapped in royal memory. A ship pierced the atmosphere, trailing blue fire, and landed hard upon the sacred plains. Whis turned his head slightly. "Ah, how delightful! Another thread of fate arrives." Kakarot opened his eyes, feeling the vibration of something familiar yet forgotten. The air around him tasted of battle and longing. And from the smoke, a voice broke through, sharp as the crack of a sword. "Who dares call himself a Saiyan and stand beneath a god's sky?" Kakarot straightened slowly, his aura flickering gold at the edges. The words carried something he didn't yet understand, something like recognition. The figure stepped forward, armor gleaming, eyes burning like dying stars. "My name is Vegeta, Prince of the Saiyan race." Kakarot's heartbeat faltered, then steadied. "So, the past has found me," he whispered. Whis's smile curved faintly. "Ah, the fire meets the calm." And in the shadows above them, BEERUS's tail swayed once, almost pleased. "Let's see," the god murmured, "what happens when awareness meets pride?" The air grew heavy. The stars leaned closer to watch. The next chapter of destiny, the clash of Saiyan souls, had begun. The ship's hull steamed against the sacred air of BEERUS's world. Its energy was coarse and mortal, trembling with rage disguised as purpose.
When the ramp fell, it struck the planet like a gauntlet. Vegeta stepped out first, shoulders squared, chin raised. Every line of his armor gleamed under the twin suns, every motion honed by a life that had never known peace. Behind him, silence. Even the divine wind seemed to watch.
Kakarot stood barefoot before the temple, his orange gi faintly scorched from morning training, his aura silent, the opposite of everything Vegeta's presence demanded. For a heartbeat, they only stared, not as strangers, not as enemies, but as two halves of a story split long ago by fate. You're alive. Vegeta's voice carried both disbelief and accusation. Kakarot smiled softly. So are you. The prince's scowl deepened. What is this place? What have you become? A student, Kakarot said simply. Of who? BEERUS's shadow fell across them both. His golden eyes narrowed, and his tail swayed lazily like a serpent deciding whether to strike. Of me. Vegeta turned sharply. Recognition and fear flickered across his face. Lord BEERUS? I didn't come here to... BEERUS waved a hand dismissively. Spare me your excuses. You're trespassing on my world. The only reason you still breathe is because I find your interruption entertaining. Whis chuckled behind him. And because it's been a rather dull century, my lord. Vegeta's pride wavered under their amusement, but not for long. If he's your student, then he's forgotten what it means to be Saiyan. No god can tame the blood that runs in our veins. Kakarot's gaze softened. Maybe it was never meant to be tamed. Then what is it you've done? Become his pet? His priest? No, Kakarot said quietly. I've just stopped fighting the silence. Vegeta sneered. You speak like an old fool. Kakarot smiled faintly. Maybe that's what strength is, remembering what the young forget. For a moment, the wind turned cold. BEERUS's tail flicked once. Saiyans arguing philosophy. Whis, did the universe always have such comedy?
Only when mortals begin to dream, Whis replied. Vegeta turned from the gods and faced his rival fully. Enough riddles. If you're still Saiyan, then fight me. I'll show you what pride looks like without divine chains. Kakarot exhaled, slow and calm. You'll find no pride in this fight, Vegeta. Only reflection. Reflection? The prince spat. I don't need to see myself in you. Then you'll never see what you're becoming. Without warning, Vegeta lunged. The air cracked. The first blow came fast, a blur of rage wrapped in mastery. Kakarot's forearm met it easily, the collision creating a shock wave that rippled through the sky. The planet groaned, but held. Their battle was not one of words now. It was rhythm and collision, silence and scream. Each strike sang of their history. Vegeta's need to dominate, Kakarot's will to understand. BEERUS watched from his throne of stone, chin resting on his palm. Mortals, always fighting to remember who they are. Whis nodded, his staff humming as it captured the spectacle. Perhaps remembering is the only battle that never ends. The fight intensified. Vegeta's aura burned blue, a storm of Super Saiyan God power. The ground beneath him melted into glass. You've grown soft, he shouted. You used to burn hotter than this. Kakarot's eyes shimmered silver white. His movements were fluid, weightless. Every motion guided not by instinct, but awareness. He vanished. Vegeta blinked, and pain bloomed across his jaw before he could react. Kakarot was behind him, silent as the wind that moved through the gods' gardens. You think too loudly, Kakarot said softly. Vegeta snarled, spinning and firing a blast of azure light.
It roared forward, shaking the horizon, but when it cleared, Kakarot was already gone, standing yards away, untouched. "You hesitate," Vegeta growled. "Why? Do you pity me?"
Kakarot shook his head. "No, I listen." "Then listen to this!" Vegeta's power spiked again, red merging with blue, divine ki flaring like molten steel. "I've walked through destruction, fought gods, faced death. I won't be made small by your serenity." The air trembled. The pressure bent the temple's reflection in the lake. Whis turned his head toward BEERUS. "If he continues like this, your garden will evaporate." BEERUS didn't move. "Let it. The roots grow back faster when something bleeds." Kakarot's voice cut through the chaos, calm but sharp. "Vegeta, your strength has always been born from defiance. But what happens when there's nothing left to defy?" Vegeta froze mid-strike, caught between instinct and comprehension. "What are you—" Kakarot stepped forward and the world dimmed. "You fight everyone because you can't stop fighting yourself." The words hit harder than any blow. Vegeta's aura faltered, flickering like a torch in the wind. For an instant, his eyes betrayed him. Pain beneath the pride. Memory. Loneliness. The boy who'd watched his world die and built his ego into armor. Kakarot lowered his fists. "You still chasing a ghost, Vegeta. But even ghosts grow tired of running." Silence. Then Vegeta screamed, a raw, feral roar that tore through the still air. His ki erupted into flame, swallowing the ground. "You dare lecture me? You who left your people, your name, your past." "I didn't leave them," Kakarot said softly. "I became what they couldn't." The words broke something. Vegeta's power surged past thought, past reason, his form flickering between blue and crimson, his aura twisted, chaotic, divine and mortal ki colliding. Whis' smile faded. "If he continues, he'll tear his spirit apart." Kakarot stepped forward. "Then I'll catch it." And in that instant, he vanished. The sky exploded. Their collision shattered light itself, the fabric of BEERUS's world flickering between day and night. Every blow carried philosophy, every movement meaning. Vegeta struck like vengeance incarnate. Kakarot answered like truth itself. When the dust cleared, the prince was on one knee, gasping, his armor cracked. Kakarot stood over him, hand extended. Vegeta stared at it, pride trembling. "I don't need your pity." "It's not pity," Kakarot said. "It's peace." For a moment, neither moved. Then Vegeta struck his hand aside. "Keep your peace," he spat. "I'll find my own." He rose and walked away, not defeated, not victorious, only silent. From the balcony, BEERUS's expression softened, ever so slightly. "He'll come back." Whis smiled. "Of course. Pride always circles back to the mirror." BEERUS looked at Kakarot, whose aura faded into still light. "And you just challenged a god of destruction without lifting your anger once." Kakarot turned toward him. "Maybe destruction isn't something to fear. Maybe it's something to understand." BEERUS's eyes gleamed, a hunter spark beneath his calm. "Then let's see what happens when understanding meets oblivion." The horizon pulsed violet, the wind turned divine. The true training was about to begin.
The suns had long since dipped beyond the horizon, yet the air of BEERUS's planet still burned with the aftertaste of battle. The ground shimmered faintly where Vegeta's last blow had struck, the grass now threaded with veins of blue flame that refused to die. Kakarot stood at the lake's edge, barefoot, his reflection trembling beneath the starlight. The world was quiet again, too quiet. Even the gods had withdrawn into silence, as if waiting to see whether the mortal would break beneath the weight of what he'd just faced. He could still hear Vegeta's voice echoing in his mind. "You, who left your people, your name, your past."
The words bit deep. He thought himself beyond pride, beyond the chains of identity. But pride is a whisper that never dies. It hides not in arrogance, but in memory. Kakarot closed his eyes. Was he right? He murmured. Did I run from what I was? The lake stirred, answering not with sound, but reflection. His mirrored image shimmered, first as the man he was now, calm and quiet, then as the warrior he'd once been, hair golden, eyes fierce, body trembling with power and hunger. Two selves faced each other in the water, one seeking peace, one demanding proof. The reflection spoke, not aloud, but within him. You call yourself enlightened, yet what is enlightenment without fire? Kakarot's hand tightened. Fire burns. So does purpose. He looked up at the twin moons, breathing deeply. I don't want to destroy anymore. Then what do you want? The question struck him harder than any blow from BEERUS or Vegeta. For the first time since he'd arrived on this world, he didn't have an answer. He stood there for hours, unmoving, unthinking, until dawn began to bloom like gold behind the horizon. Whis approached quietly, the soft chime of his staff like wind over glass. You've met your reflection, he said. Few mortals endure the sight of their own contradiction. Kakarot didn't look up. Why is peace so hard to hold? Because peace isn't stillness, it's balance, and balance is movement, constant, endless. Kakarot nodded slowly. Then I need to move again. When BEERUS found him, the Saiyan was already on the mountain plateau, the highest point of the gods' world, where the air was so thin, even divine energy had to whisper.
You intend to train again? BEERUS asked, his tone neutral, but his tail already twitching. I intend to understand, Kakarot replied. Vegeta's pride isn't wrong. He's fire, I'm air, but both exist because of space between them. I want to find that space. BEERUS tilted his head. And how will you do that? Kakarot smiled faintly. By touching your silence again. Whis appeared beside them, smiling. Oh my! Are you asking Lord BEERUS for another taste of Hakai energy? BEERUS's grin widened, slow, feline, dangerous. He's asking for more than that. He wants to touch the end again and survive. Kakarot met his gaze. I don't want to survive it. I want to hear it. For a heartbeat, the god of destruction said nothing. Then, slowly, he raised his hand. Then listen carefully, mortal, for this time the silence might answer. The world darkened. From BEERUS's palm bloomed not light, but absence, a violet void that shimmered like a wound in space itself. Hakai energy, pure destruction, the end of all pattern, all song, all being. Whis's staff glowed faintly, ready to intervene, but his expression remained serene. Kakarot stepped forward. The first wave hit him like gravity turned inside out. His bones screamed, his cells bent, his ki trembled against collapse. But he did not fight. He did not roar. He listened. Every fiber of his body began to dissolve, and in the dissolution, he heard it, not silence, but a whisper, the voice of unmaking, the language of endings. Everything ends so that something else may begin. He opened his eyes, and within them reflected the void, not as fear, but as understanding. BEERUS's hand lowered. For the first time, the god of destruction hesitated. "You're still here?" Kakarot exhaled, his aura now faintly threaded with violet, divine yet mortal. It wasn't destruction. It was renewal.
BEERUS frowned. "You presume too much." Whis smiled softly. "Do you? Or does he simply see what even gods forget? That destruction and creation are one motion, not two." The god of destruction turned away, the faintest hint of irritation in his stride. "Mortals shouldn't talk like that. It sounds dangerous." Whis chuckled. "That's how evolution always sounds, my lord." That night, BEERUS could not sleep. His dreams, usually soft with void and quiet, were restless, filled with images of golden light dissolving into silver calm, of mortals who looked at him not with fear, but with understanding. When he awoke, he found Kakarot meditating again, this time beneath the falling stars. The air around him glowed faintly, not gold, not white, but something in between. "You should rest," BEERUS said, though his voice carried no command. Kakarot opened his eyes. "Rest is for the body, stillness is for the soul." BEERUS stared at him for a long time. "You're beginning to sound like Whis." Kakarot smiled. "Maybe Whis sounds like the universe." The god snorted softly but didn't leave. He watched the Saiyan for a while, arms crossed, tail motionless. "You really believe this?" BEERUS asked finally. "That destruction and creation are one?" "I don't believe it, I feel it. When I destroy my limits, something new wakes up inside me. When you destroy a world, new life grows in the space left behind. You and I aren't opposites, Lord BEERUS. We're mirrors." The god's eyes glinted. "Careful, mortal. Mirrors can break." Kakarot nodded. "Then I'll learn to reflect light even when I'm shattered." For the first time in eons, BEERUS smiled, small, genuine, tired. "Whis," he said quietly, without turning, "prepare the outer ring." Whis tilted his head. "The outer ring? But that arena hasn't been used since I stopped being curious. It's time I remembered what that felt like."
Whis's eyes gleamed. "Ah, so the god of destruction wishes to train." BEERUS's tail flicked. "Don't mistake curiosity for humility. I only wish to see if his silence still sings when struck." Kakarot rose slowly, his aura shimmering like the edge of dawn. "Then let's listen together." And as the stars gathered above them, as the twin suns began to rise once more, the universe itself seemed to hold its breath. Because for the first time since the beginning of time, a mortal and a god would train not as enemies, but as reflections. At the edge of BEERUS's world, where the violet light of the twin suns could no longer reach, lay the outer ring, a vast expanse of floating stone encircled by halos of molten energy. It was not a place of beauty. It was a place of endings. Here, the gods tested the boundaries of what could not die. Here, sound itself vanished when struck. Whis arrived first, his staff leaving ripples in the thin, eternal air. He turned, smiling faintly as he felt two energies approaching, one refined and old as the cosmos,
the other wild and newly aware. BEERUS appeared in a shimmer of violet flame, his presence heavy enough to bend gravity itself. Behind him, Kakarot descended in silence, each step deliberate, his aura faint yet endless. "Welcome," Whis said softly, "to the place where destruction remembers creation." BEERUS stretched, his eyes glinting with the same fierce amusement he once wore when challenging gods. "It's been too long since I stood here. The last time the stars themselves shook." Kakarot bowed slightly, his voice calm. "Then let's see if the universe still remembers how to tremble." BEERUS's tail swayed, a signal Whis recognized. The god was no longer curious, he was hungry. The battle began without announcement. BEERUS's first movement was not an attack, it was a command. The air itself obeyed. Space folded inward, crushing reality into a dense knot. The ground fractured into spirals, then mended itself instantly, as if afraid to disobey. Kakarot stepped forward through it all. His aura did not flare, it simply was. Each motion he made left no afterimage, no wasted energy. Every breath was a conversation with infinity.
BEERUS watched, his grin widening. So the mortal learned to hide the noise of power. Cute trick. He vanished. When he reappeared, the world screamed. His elbow came down like a meteor, cracking through dimensions. Kakarot blocked with both hands. The impact created a silence so pure it erased the echo of its own existence. For a moment, they stood frozen, god and mortal, locked in stillness, each feeling the other's pulse beating in their bones. Then the silence broke. BEERUS struck again, faster, sharper. His movements were no longer precise, they were instinct made manifest. Every blow carried not technique, but meaning, the meaning of finality. Kakarot parried, barely. Each block sent sparks of ki that glowed like dying stars. Each counterstrike hummed like prayer. Whis hovered above them, observing quietly. "Fascinating," he murmured. "He's not matching BEERUS's power, he's synchronizing with it." Indeed, where BEERUS struck, Kakarot yielded. Where the god pressed, he drew back. It was no longer a fight. It was a conversation written in energy and silence. Minutes, or perhaps centuries passed. Time bent oddly here. Then BEERUS changed. His blows grew slower, heavier. His aura condensed into something darker, deeper, the violet of dying galaxies. He spoke softly, almost reverentially. "Do you know what it means to destroy, Kakarot?" "To end," the Saiyan said. "No," replied BEERUS. "To erase meaning itself. Creation has song, life has rhythm. Destruction is the silence between them. It's the rest in the symphony." He raised his hand. The air around it died. Even Whis' staff dimmed. "This," he whispered, "is what you can't understand." He struck. Kakarot didn't move. Instead, he exhaled. His aura expanded, not violently, but gracefully, a wave of stillness washing outward.
The Hakai energy collided with him and dissolved. Whis' eyes widened. He absorbed it? No, not absorbed. Heard. BEERUS stepped back, eyes narrowing. "What did you do?" Kakarot opened his eyes. Within them, reflection of twin lights, gold and violet intertwined. "I didn't destroy your power, I accepted it." "You dare?" "I didn't fight the silence," Kakarot continued. "I listened until I understood what it wanted." BEERUS froze. The words struck him harder than any attack could. For eons, he had been the master of endings. the instrument of erasure, but he had never once asked what destruction desired. And in the mortal's calm, he saw the truth he'd forgotten. Destruction was not hatred, it was compassion, the universe clearing space for itself to grow again. For the first time in his existence, the god of destruction hesitated. Kakarot stepped closer, his aura now shimmering between divine violet and human warmth. You destroy because it's your nature, but have you ever asked if your nature still serves the universe or just your pride? BEERUS's expression darkened. You speak as if you've seen eternity. I've seen what eternity does to those who forget to feel. A pause. Something ancient cracked behind BEERUS's gaze. Not anger, not sorrow, recognition. You presume much, Saiyan. Kakarot bowed his head slightly. Then let me prove it. He extended his hand, palm open, an invitation, not a challenge. Let's destroy together. Whis' eyes widened faintly. Oh dear, this should be interesting.
BEERUS's grin returned, sharp, delighted, dangerous. You wish to merge your ki with mine? Mortal, you'll cease to exist. Maybe that's the point, Kakarot said. And then the world vanished. Their palms met. Power without boundary surged outward, erasing color, sound, time. The ring below them disintegrated into light. Whis shielded his eyes, his staff flickering as he anchored the world itself. Inside the explosion, there was no fight, only stillness. Kakarot's ki intertwined with BEERUS's. Mortal will met divine instinct. Gold met violet. Creation met destruction. They were not two forces colliding. They were the universe remembering its own breath. For a moment, all of reality folded inward. Every planet, every life, every thought compressed into a single pulse of understanding. And in that pulse, the gods heard something they had never heard before. The sound of their own silence. When it ended, both stood still, unscathed, but changed. BEERUS's aura had dimmed, not weakened, but clarified. His eyes no longer burned with chaos, but with comprehension. Kakarot's hair shimmered faintly silver white, the aura of ultra instinct now threaded with divine violet, the mark of the destroyer's blessing. Whis descended slowly, his smile almost tender. Congratulations, he said softly. You've both survived awareness. BEERUS turned to Kakarot. What did you see? Kakarot's answer was simple, that even gods can fear silence. BEERUS's eyes flickered, and for the briefest instant, Whis could have sworn the god smiled like a man freed from burden. The sky above began to rebuild itself, stars flickering back into being, the air tasting of new beginnings. Whis sighed, spinning his staff lazily. Well, that was magnificent. Two beings attempting to rewrite the relationship between life and death before lunch. Shall I fetch tea?
Neither answered. They simply stood there, god and mortal, breathing in rhythm. The silence between them wasn't emptiness, it was understanding. Night returned. The outer ring was gone, burned into pure light, yet its memory lingered like a scar in the cosmos. Kakarot sat beside the lake once more, staring into the reflection of two moons. BEERUS stood behind him, silent. You've changed, the god said at last. So have you, Kakarot replied. BEERUS looked toward the horizon, where new stars had begun to form. Do you know what Whis said to me once? Kakarot shook his head. He said that the universe doesn't need gods who rule, it needs gods who remember. Kakarot smiled faintly. Then maybe remembering is the real power. BEERUS closed his eyes. Perhaps. They stood there, teacher and student, god and mortal, as the wind whispered through the divine plains. And for the first time, BEERUS's world felt alive. The lake's surface shimmered like polished glass beneath the gaze of the two moons. The energy of their union still lingered in the air, soft, weightless, eternal. For the first time in eons, BEERUS's planet did not hum with divine pressure. It breathed. Kakarot sat with his legs folded, his ji torn and scorched, his aura faint but luminous. The violet threads within his ki pulsed quietly, not as power, but as presence. Every breath he took carried the calm of the void and the rhythm of creation itself. BEERUS stood behind him, arms crossed, his tail swaying slowly. His sharp, arrogant composure had dulled into something else, not weakness, not fatigue, but humility, the kind that comes only after touching truth. Tell me, Saiyan, when you stood in that silence, when you felt Hakai consume you, what did you see? Kakarot opened his eyes. They glowed faintly with a light that wasn't mortal. I saw everything that I ever fought to protect, and everything I destroyed along the way. They weren't separate.
BEERUS frowned. You speak like Whis, or worse, like the Kais. No, Kakarot replied. The Kais create. You destroy. But both serve balance. I just stood in the middle and listened. The god turned his gaze toward the stars, a faint smile ghosting his lips. Listening. You mortals and your fascination with meaning. Sometimes there is no meaning, only instinct. Maybe instinct is meaning, Kakarot said quietly. Maybe the universe breathes through both, your instinct to destroy and mine to evolve. BEERUS's ears twitched. You speak as though you understand the universe. Kakarot smiled faintly. No, I think the universe is trying to understand us. From a distance, Whis watched them, hands folded neatly behind his back. The eternal attendant's smile was as serene as ever, but his eyes betrayed quiet astonishment. He whispered to himself, a mortal who made a god question himself. The Grand Priest will find this most entertaining. He turned his staff slightly, letting its orb reflect the two figures below. Balance, he mused. At last they've found it. Creation, destruction, and consciousness intertwined. His eyes softened. Perhaps that's how new gods are born. Morning came, painted in lavender light. Kakarot rose early. Standing at the planet's edge, where the ground curved gently into nothing, the universe stretched endlessly before him, a river of stars and silence. He closed his eyes. For the first time in his existence, he didn't feel the need to move. Every other moment in his existence had been motion, training, fighting, reaching, but now he simply was. Whis appeared beside him, his reflection dancing faintly in the cosmic haze. You're quiet today, he said. I'm listening. The universe feels different. It's lighter. Whis nodded. Because a god remembered what it meant to care. Kakarot turned toward him. BEERUS? Yes, Whis smiled. For the first time, he felt compassion without punishment. Destruction, when understood, becomes release, not wrath.
Kakarot looked back at the stars. Then maybe gods can change too. Whis chuckled softly. Everything that exists must change, even gods, especially gods. He paused, his tone shifting slightly, as though revealing a truth too old to name.
You realize what you've done, don't you? You've touched Hakai and lived. You've harmonized with it without erasing yourself. Kakarot said nothing. Whis continued. Such balance has never been achieved by mortal nor divine. Even ultra instinct, the technique of angels, bends before this kind of unity. Kakarot lowered his head slightly. It wasn't technique. It was surrender. Whis's smile widened. Ah, yes, the strongest warriors are not those who conquer. They are those who accept. Later, when BEERUS approached, his presence no longer cracked the air. His steps were soundless. For once, he looked less like a god and more like a man remembering his youth. I've decided something, BEERUS said, folding his arms. Kakarot turned toward him, curious. I'm not your master anymore. Kakarot blinked. Then what am I to you? BEERUS's tail flicked once. A mirror I can't break. Kakarot smiled, bowing slightly. Then I'll make sure to stay polished. BEERUS snorted. Don't get poetic. It doesn't suit you. Whis interjected lightly. On the contrary, my lord, poetry suits every being who's learned to see himself. The god rolled his eyes. You're unbearable. Whis bowed with mock grace. I try. That night, the three stood together beneath the endless canopy of stars. The atmosphere was different, not the sharp tension of divine order, but the still warmth of shared reverence. Kakarot broke the silence first. When I first came here, I thought I needed to master divine power. I thought it was something to earn. BEERUS glanced sideways. And now? Now I know it's something to remember, Kakarot said. Power isn't about control, it's about recognition. The universe doesn't fight us, it flows through us. BEERUS hummed quietly. You sound like someone ready to die. Kakarot smiled faintly. Maybe that's what life really is, learning how to die without fear. Whis's gaze softened, almost wistful. If mortals ever understood that truth, my work would be quite dull. Then, a sound, soft, unnatural, a ripple that didn't belong to this world. All three turned. Across the lake, space itself shivered. A golden fissure tore through the horizon, glowing, humming with the resonance of divine energy. Whis's smile vanished. That's not possible. BEERUS's eyes narrowed, the lazy arrogance gone in an instant. That's angelic resonance, but not yours. From within the light, a shape began to form, tall, graceful, wrapped in celestial cloth that shimmered like dawn and dusk woven together. A voice echoed, layered and infinite. Lord BEERUS, Whis, and the mortal who touched Hakai? Kakarot felt the air around him tighten. Every atom bowed in reverence. BEERUS clenched his fists. Grand Priest. The figure stepped fully from the light, smiling with calm that could unmake worlds. His eyes, endless and kind, fell upon Kakarot. So, the Grand Priest said softly, this is the Saiyan who stood at the edge of destruction and listened? Kakarot bowed instinctively, but the divine gesture was met with a faint chuckle. No need for reverence, you've already crossed it.
BEERUS looked uneasy. What brings you here, Grand Priest? The being's gaze did not move. Change. The kind that ripples beyond gods. The kind that only mortals begin.
He turned slightly toward Whis. "You've nurtured more than balance, my son. You've nurtured awareness." Whis bowed his head. "I merely allowed what wished to bloom." The Grand Priest smiled faintly, and bloom it did. He looked back to Kakarat. "The multiverse is stirring. The silence you touched, others have begun to hear it." Kakarat frowned. "Others?" "Yes," the Grand Priest said. "Across universes, across time, mortals and gods alike are waking to the same call, the song of remembrance." BEERUS's tail twitched. "I should have known peace wouldn't last." Whis smiled faintly. "Peace never lasts, my lord, but sometimes it transforms." Kakarat stood still, feeling the echo of the Grand Priest's words lingering in his bones. The end of hierarchy, the birth of harmony. He looked up at the stars, and for the first time, they didn't seem distant. They seemed alive.
The twin suns of BEERUS's planet rose in silence, yet the light felt heavier than before, as if the heavens themselves hesitated. The golden fissure left by the Grand Priest had closed, but its echo trembled in the air like a memory that refused to fade. Kakarat stood at the edge of the lake again, his reflection rippling with the violet threads that still shimmered faintly within his aura. He did not move. He simply stared into the water, as if searching for the answer to a question too vast to name. Behind him, BEERUS's voice broke the silence. "So the Grand Priest thinks mortals can rewrite balance itself. He underestimates what balance costs." Whis appeared beside him, arms folded neatly behind his back. "He doesn't underestimate it, my lord. He invites it." BEERUS shot him a glance. "Invites it. The last time mortals began to rewrite balance, universes fell into ruin." Whis smiled faintly. "Perhaps ruin is simply balance remembered." Kakarat turned toward them. "He said something was waking across universes. A call." "Yes," Whis said softly. "And you heard it first." BEERUS snorted. "Then maybe it's your fault." Kakarat smiled faintly. "If it is, then I'll answer it." The god's tail flicked. "You're speaking like a fool again." "Maybe," Kakarat said quietly, "but the universe tends to whisper to fools first." That night he dreamed. He saw stars collapsing into one another, yet from each collapse light bloomed again, softer, brighter, eternal. He saw warriors and gods across galaxies, some training, some praying, some breaking, all hearing the same faint hum that pulsed through their veins like a forgotten heartbeat. And beneath it all, he saw himself not as one man, but as 1,000 echoes. Each version of him, across time, across choice, looked up at the same sky, whispering the same word: remember. When he woke, the air itself seemed alive. The trees on BEERUS's planet were glowing faintly, their leaves flickering with divine ki. Even the ground pulsed like something breathing beneath its surface. Whis appeared at his side. "You feel it too, don't you?" Kakarat nodded. "It's spreading." Whis looked toward the stars. Mortals and gods are no longer separate in thought. When a mortal remembers his place in the whole, the divine remembers its humanity. That union changes everything. BEERUS approached, his eyes sharp. And when everything changes, chaos follows. Wiss's gaze softened. Or harmony. It depends on who listens first. The sky tore open again. This time, it was not gold. It was crimson. An energy unlike anything Kakarot had felt before poured through the heavens. It was not destruction. It was not creation. It was resistance. Beerus's eyes narrowed. So, the other gods of destruction have noticed. Out of the tear descended shapes, 13 of them, each radiating a divine signature so vast it made the air vibrate. Their power was suffocating, yet oddly unified, like a single emotion wearing many faces. From the forefront stepped a figure Kakarot recognized, tall, sharp-eyed, his voice dripping with controlled fury. "Lord BEERUS," said Belmod of Universe 11. "You've broken the seal." BEERUS crossed his arms. "Seal? Don't flatter yourself, clown. I broke nothing that wasn't already meant to end." Belmod's aura flared. "A mortal who touched Hakai is an abomination. You've allowed chaos to enter divine order." Whis raised an eyebrow. "Chaos? Or growth?" "Silence," Belmod snapped. His gaze turned toward Kakarot, and the air thickened. "You Saiyan, you stand where gods tread. Do you understand what you've done?" Kakarot didn't answer. He looked into the crimson rift, where light bent inward and stars bled. "I think I'm beginning to." Belmod's hand rose. "Then be unmade." He unleashed his ki, an ocean of red flame that swallowed the horizon. But before the wave could strike, a violet spark tore through it, splitting the energy apart with impossible precision.
BEERUS stepped forward, eyes burning with cold fury. "You'll not touch him." Belmod sneered. "Defending a mortal, BEERUS? How far you fallen?" BEERUS's voice was low, dangerous. "No, I've risen." The two gods vanished, and the sky screamed. Their clash was nothing short of cosmic. The space between them warped, galaxies trembling under the weight of their conflict. Whis raised his staff, stabilizing the world as BEERUS and Belmod's auras collided, violet and crimson devouring one another. Kakarot could only watch for a moment before instinct took over. He stepped forward, hands clenched, eyes burning. Whis stopped him gently. "This is not your battle." Kakarot shook his head. "It's everyone's." Before Whis could reply, Kakarot was gone, streaking into the sky, his aura exploding in gold, then silver, then violet. He entered the storm. Inside the chaos, he saw BEERUS straining, not from weakness, but from restraint. The god's power could end everything in an instant, yet he held back, balancing fury with awareness. Kakarot appeared beside him, his voice calm even amidst annihilation. "Let me share it." BEERUS didn't look at him. "You'll be destroyed." "Then let me be destroyed as you are, for balance." The god's eyes met his, and for a moment pride gave way to something like faith. "Very well," BEERUS whispered. Their auras merged once more, violet and mortal gold fusing into a brilliance so fierce it shattered Belmod's assault. When the light cleared, the other gods of destruction stood frozen, for in front of them was something they had never seen, a mortal and a god standing as one.
Their energy pulsed in harmony, not domination, not defiance, but truth. Kakarot's hair glowed white and violet, his body surrounded by a calm that shook creation itself. BEERUS's eyes softened, his power flowing evenly beside the Saiyans. Whis whispered, awe slipping through his composure. So this is what it means when destruction remembers creation. Belmod fell to one knee, his divine flame trembling. What are you? Kakarot's voice was quiet, almost tender, the sound of balance. And then he opened his hand. A ripple of pure energy swept across the sky, not a blast, but a breath. The crimson fissure dimmed, the gods felt their fury dissolve into stillness. One by one, their auras faded. Belmod lowered his gaze. I see now. It was never chaos. It was awakening. Kakarot smiled faintly. Then wake with us. The air stilled. The stars above began to pulse again, brighter this time, as if rejoicing in reunion. And in that light, every god, every being, every thread of existence seemed to hum in the same tone. Not war, not worship, harmony. When all was silent again, Kakarot stood on the mountain, the wind whispering softly through the grass. BEERUS stood beside him, his eyes closed, breathing deeply, not as a god, but as something freer. You've changed everything, BEERUS said. Kakarot smiled faintly. No, we just remembered. Whis approached, his usual serenity laced with pride. So, what now? Kakarot looked toward the horizon where the suns were rising again. Now, we listen.
And for the first time since time itself began, the universe did not roar with creation or crumble with destruction. It sang, a quiet, eternal hymn, the sound of gods and mortals remembering they were never different at all. The stars burned quietly, as if remembering his will. The silence that followed the gods' awakening was not the quiet of emptiness. It was the quiet of realization, a stillness that reached across galaxies, threading through dimensions into the hearts of both mortal and divine. Whis stood beside the fading glow of the battle, his staff humming faintly. It's done, he whispered. The balance has been rewritten, not by decree, but by remembrance. BEERUS remained motionless, his gaze fixed on the horizon where the crimson fissure had once burned. His expression was unreadable, not fury, not peace. Something deeper. Something like grief. Kakarot watched the twin suns climb higher, their light no longer harsh but warm, almost gentle. His body trembled from the resonance of what had passed, yet his spirit was calm. Within him, the divine violet and mortal gold danced as one flame. BEERUS finally spoke. So, this is it, the age where gods and mortals breathe the same air. Whis smiled softly. Not the end, my lord, the beginning. BEERUS turned his head slightly, golden eyes glinting. Beginnings are messy. Mortals think awakening brings peace. But awakening only deepens the questions. Kakarot nodded slowly. Then maybe questions are the new gods. Whis chuckled, amused. How poetic of you, Goku. You've gone from warrior to philosopher. Goku smiled faintly. Maybe they were never different things. The universe shifted. Across worlds, strange phenomena bloomed. Stars pulsing in rhythm. Planets glowing with harmonic light, mortals awakening to powers once reserved for gods. A farmer in Universe 7 felt his heartbeat in sync with the galaxies. A child in Universe 6 dreamed of energy that healed instead of burned. Even the Kaioshin felt their power change, softer, wiser. Everywhere, beings began to feel it, not domination, not submission, but unity. And somewhere in the heart of the multiverse, the Grand Priest watched.
He stood before the endless stairs of Zeno's palace, his hands folded. His expression was calm, but his aura pulsed faintly. Not in disapproval, but in contemplation. Zeno sat upon his floating throne, eyes wide and childlike as ever. "Grand Priest, the universes feel funny." "Yes, my lord," the Grand Priest said gently. "They are learning to sing again." "Sing? I like songs." The Grand Priest smiled faintly. "Yes, my lord. But this one isn't sung by gods. It's sung by everything." Back on BEERUS's planet, the Saiyan sat beneath the sacred tree, his eyes closed. His ki no longer radiated, it whispered. Each breath he took stirred the grass, each heartbeat moved the sky. Whis approached quietly. "You've done what no one has ever done, Goku. You've blurred the line between divine and mortal." Goku opened his eyes. Maybe that line was never real. Whis tilted his head. And yet, even illusions can shape eternity. Goku looked down at his hands, hands that had broken mountains, cradled friends, destroyed and saved in equal measure. If gods destroy and mortals create, then maybe we were always meant to meet in the middle, not as opposites, but as reminders. Whis' smile deepened. Reminders of what? That everything ends so something else can begin. Whis chuckled softly. A truth even angels forget. When BEERUS joined them, his presence was no longer heavy. The air didn't bend under his power, it embraced it. "You know," BEERUS said, sitting lazily beside Goku, "you've made things complicated." "How so?" Goku asked. BEERUS smirked. "The other gods will start asking questions. They'll want to understand what you did, what we did. And the Grand Priest? Continue to watch. He always does." Whis finished. BEERUS exhaled. "I should destroy you for this." Goku grinned. "You could try." BEERUS laughed, a deep, ancient sound, echoing like thunder across the calm world. "You know, I almost forgot what it felt like to laugh like this." "Maybe destruction laughs too," Goku said softly. BEERUS looked at him, eyes narrowing in something like wonder. "Maybe it does." That night, Whis departed for a moment to speak with the stars, his way of sending messages across the divine web. When he returned, his expression carried the serenity of timeless truth. "It's begun," he said. "The awakening is spreading faster than expected. The universes are resonating. Even the angels feel it." BEERUS looked up. "And the Grand Priest?" Whis' eyes twinkled. "He approves. Quietly, of course. He always prefers to let destiny play its own melody." Goku looked up at the stars. "Then what happens to me?" Whis smiled softly. "What happens to any melody once it's played, Goku? It becomes part of everything." BEERUS frowned. "Don't talk like he's dying." Whis shook his head. "Not dying, transforming." Goku stood, his aura faintly glowing. "I can feel it. The silence we touched, it's calling again." BEERUS rose too. "If you go, there may be no coming back." "I know. Then why?" Goku turned toward the horizon, his eyes soft but certain. "Because it's not about leaving, it's about remembering, so no one forgets again." The light began to form around him. Soft, warm, neither divine nor mortal, just existence. BEERUS looked away, hiding something behind his stoic face. "You were a fool from the start." Goku smiled. "Then thank you for teaching me how to be one worth remembering." Whis bowed lightly, his voice almost a whisper. "Wherever you go, the universe will echo in kind." The wind rose, the stars brightened. Goku stepped into the light.
As his form dissolved, his voice lingered, not in words, but in feeling, a vibration that moved through the fabric of everything. When the glow faded, Whis and BEERUS stood alone beneath the endless sky. For a long time, neither spoke. Then BEERUS sighed softly. "He's not gone." Whis smiled. "No, he's just everywhere now." Centuries later, on Earth, in a quiet field beneath a golden sky, a child sat cross-legged, eyes closed, breathing softly. The air around him shimmered faintly with warmth and rhythm. His grandmother called from the house, "Dinner time." The boy opened his eyes. For a moment they reflected violet and gold. He smiled. Somewhere far beyond, a god stirred, not in anger, but in peace. And in that silence, the universe breathed as one. The hymn of harmony continued, eternal, unseen, but felt in every sunrise. The stars burned quietly, as if remembering his will.